the latest developments mean for the future of the relationship between the UK and the European Union. Let's discuss this further. Joining us now live from the UK is Professor Tim Wilson. He is a political commentator. Thank you very much, Professor Wilson, for joining us on this news hour. Now, after the new strain of COVID-19 emerged in the United Kingdom, countries from across the world suspended flights from and to the UK. One of them was France, but now it seems France is backtracking from those measures, imposing harsh border controls and then withdrawing them within 2 days. Doesn't it indicate that the decisions were made in haste?
Well, I think the decisions were made politically. You've got to look at this crisis over the variant through the prism, I'm afraid, of Brexit. We know that the COVID variant, this lineage B117, is demonstrably in Denmark, and it's probably in France. It's just that we've got there faster with our testing regime. Now, what does this mean? This means that France has been able to demonstrate very clearly, Europe has been able to demonstrate very clearly how the traffic from Britain and to Britain can be stopped in an instant. We are effectively in a blockade situation. This is very alarming because, from the European point of view, we now have a demonstration of what it might be like to leave with a no deal. I mean, there's a guy, the Hofstadt, said that now we will understand what leaving the European Union means. We've got 1,500 plus lorries stuck at the Channel ports. They're now facing tests. There may be the lateral flow tests, which will be quicker to implement, but nevertheless, it's a lot more bureaucracy. What is emerging about Brexit is that Europe is able to impose this bureaucracy with the threat of a blockade, and I don't see that the actions we've got over COVID are going to change greatly when we come to Brexit. This is in part a negotiating tactic, and I find it very, very worrying. This is our relationship with our neighbours, and that relationship is in serious danger.
Professor Wilson, why do you think the relationship came to this point? Do you think the European Union, or perhaps many European countries, were looking for an opportunity where they can send a message to the United Kingdom, hey, listen, now you're not a part of this union, and we can close the borders whenever we want. Basically, we can do whatever we want and whenever we want. Is that the message they're trying to send?
I don't know whether it's a message they're trying to send. I'm not sure that there is so much viciousness on the part of the European Union negotiators, but certainly this is a message that has been sent. And I think the British media is understanding that message very, very clearly. This is what a no-deal Brexit will mean, that we are not in control. We might be in control of our borders, but we're not in control of our relationship with our neighbours. It's incredibly frustrating. This is offering us a practical threat and a constitutional threat. When you look at the reality, those businesses that have not been badly hurt by COVID now face a very serious threat under a no-deal Brexit of being very badly hurt by the transition into Brexit. So a no-deal Brexit is even more worrying than it was originally. And I think from that point of view, there's a lot of pressure now on Boris and the government to accept almost any deal. And what's coming out today is a lot of worries that the fishing deal, which I think is effectively a done deal now, that the fishing deal is not something that the fishing community approve of, and with good reason. There's an organisation called Fishing for Leave, which has been campaigning for leaving the EU for 5 years. The fishing industry was hit hard when Edward Heath took us into the European Union. So effectively what he surrendered was our right to our own fish. So France actually has a greater access to the fish in the waters around Britain than we do. And the deal which Boris has struck, or which has been struck at the moment, doesn't change this greatly. It provides a sort of quite a lengthy period for restoring the sovereignty to our waters. But the Fishing for Leave people say that this is abysmal. And after 5 years of wanting to get back their fish, wanting to get back a third of the fish that are caught, they've described this as the fishing backstop. And they're saying what is being negotiated now, what is being surrendered now, is practical independence. We might have nominal independence, but we are not going to have practical independence. And they would say this is probably one of the only instances in the world where we are bartering raw material for the for permission to trade. It is madness, and it's one aspect of the madness of these negotiations, and the other aspect is
now, Professor Wilson. These latest border closures have certainly highlighted some of the major flaws within Boris Johnson's Brexit policy. He maintained that the UK is going to flourish even if it leaves the European Union without a deal. But that doesn't seem to be the case right now.
I think on the contrary, you're wrong. I have to put my cards on the table. I was not a fan of Brexit, but I think you are absolutely wrong. The UK will flourish in a post-Brexit situation because the financial sector, which makes up 10% of our GDP, will continue to be very significant because it doesn't face the restrictions and the regulations that are present on the continent. And this is something to do with, it goes back originally all the way to the Great Depression in 1927 and the laws which came out to control banking then, which were repealed by Mrs. Thatcher and then later in the States by Mr. Clinton. So it's not party political. This is about the power of the banking lobby.
Okay, makes sense.
And what happened in 2007, 2008 with the financial crisis then was that independence of banking, the ability for speculative banking and high street banking to be linked was not changed. What happened was we built a sort of wall around banking, a wall of bureaucracy. And so this is where we get all our sort of security checks and so on, to reassure the public that everything is okay, whereas in fact we've got potential chaos and potential enormous wealth, and that's the thing that we're struggling with. And the fact that it accounts for so much of our GDP means it cannot be quickly surrendered. And if you want to trade, then you have no choice. You have to come to the UK because of the regulation. The regulations in Europe don't give so much access and so much opportunity. So Britain will flourish after Brexit. The problem is getting through that Brexit process. So the problem is how many people are going to be seriously hurt by a no-deal Brexit, or indeed a negotiated Brexit. And what we're seeing now is the Brexit process and the power of Europe to close its borders to us is catastrophic and chaotic. Could it have been anticipated? Yes. Could it have been avoided? no. Boris inherited a plan which was made by Mrs. May. If there is a demon in the ointment in this medicine, I'm afraid it is Mrs. May and her dithering, which gave an opportunity, maybe time, for Europe to structure a response. Europe is extraordinarily good at producing a bureaucratic...
Okay, so Professor Wilson, if I may interject here, as I understand from your explanation, the United Kingdom is going to flourish financially. The post-Brexit era is going to bring more positive things to the United Kingdom, but don't you think, especially after the recent border closures, the UK might face similar challenges in the upcoming years post-Brexit?
Oh, I think the Brexit process, as demonstrated by the border closures at the moment, could be so catastrophic it could bring us to our knees. Just a few days of the ports being closed has brought enormous tension and frustration to the country. So yes, in principle, Britain will flourish in a post-Brexit society. In practice, how do we get to that point if we have a no deal? And if Europe has so much power to stop our trade, it's very, very worrying. And I want to think the best of Europe and the negotiators, but I am always mindful of the way that Greece was treated a few years ago, and the heavy-handed systems which were put in place, which saw the resignation of Varoufakis, one of really the greatest economists to get his hands on the on power.
Okay, now Professor Wilson, let's also briefly talk about the solution to these problems. What do you think Boris Johnson needs to do differently in order to de-escalate these tensions between the European Union and the United Kingdom?
I'm afraid Boris has to get a negotiated deal. And a no deal is politically impossible. So a no deal might make sense in a long term, with a long term view. It makes no sense in a short term, and politics is partly about short term aims. We have to have a deal now. Do I think that's likely? Actually, I do. I think the fishing agreement will go through, even though there will be severe disapproval, and it may cost Boris in the end his premiership. It's certainly going to cost him his popularity. But look at the things which have been achieved, and the sort of little stars on the horizon, our own alignment of planets. So for example, Gibraltar is now planning to be in the Schengen area. This is amazing.
Right.
That is now news. If we're talking about Gibraltar's relationship with Europe and a closer relationship with Europe, then that has already been agreed. We're also seeing Michel Barnier saying that he has done all he can. Now that might sound negative in one sense. I can't do any more. Actually, it's a positive statement, because now he's surrendered the discussions to the heads, to Ursula von der Leyen and to Boris Johnson himself. That means, I would judge that to mean this is now in the political camp rather than in the negotiation camp.
Right.
So I think a deal can be struck, will be struck. It may not be struck immediately. The system may hold out for a little bit longer, but I think partly...
But there are chances for it to be struck in the near future.
Yes, and with a vision of what has happened at our ports, it's essential. We have indeed had a taste of what leaving the EU means, and we don't want to leave the EU on bad terms. I think that's the other important thing. But I think the deal we will strike will be particularly advantageous or efficacious for the EU, for the UK. I think it will not be the best deal we can have.
Professor Tim Wilson, that was a great explanation. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much for taking out the time to talk to us on A News.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right, now let's continue with the news bulletin. Let's talk about COVID-19.